Imagine this. Warren Buffett, the world's greatest investor, wakes up tomorrow with $0. No Berkshire Hathaway. No billions. Nothing. What would he do differently? The surprising truth is this. Buffett's success doesn't just come from the investments he makes. It comes from the mistakes he avoids. And that's exactly what today's video is about. We're breaking down the biggest mistakes Warren Buffett warns people never make, mistakes that quietly keep most people broke, while a small minority build lasting wealth. Now here's the kicker. Mistake number 5 is one Buffett admits nearly destroyed him. So stick with me, because you don't want to miss that. But first, if you're serious about growing your money the smart way, hit that like button. It tells YouTube you want more of this content. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Alright, let's dive into mistake number 1. Mistake 1, chasing hot tips. One of Buffett's most famous warnings is this. The worst reason to buy a stock is because everyone else is buying it. Think about the last time you heard people say, "You've got to buy this stock. Everyone's making money on it." That's the herd mentality. And Buffett wants you to avoid it at all costs. Back in the 1960s, investors were obsessed with electronics companies, something called the tronics boom. People were throwing money at anything with the word tronics in the name. It all crashed and fortunes were wiped out. Buffett stayed away because he only invests in businesses he understands. Fast forward to today, it's the same pattern. People chase meme stocks, trendy IPOs, or the latest crypto token because they don't want to miss out. But here's the reality. If you had bought Bitcoin at its peak in 2021, around $69,000, you have lost nearly 70% of your money within a year. Buffett avoids that pain. He doesn't care what's trending. He doesn't care what the crowd is doing. He sticks to the fundamentals. And remember his golden rule. Be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. But chasing hot tips isn't the only wealth killer. The next mistake is even more dangerous because it's invisible. It eats away at your money without you even noticing. Mistake 2, ignoring fees and costs. Buffett calls fees the silent killer of wealth. Here's why. Let's say you invest $10,000. If you put into a low-cost index fund that earns 8% per year, in 40 years you'll have about $217,000. But if you put that same money into a fund that charges just 2% in annual fees, your ending balance shrinks to only $100,000. You just lost over half your wealth to fees. Buffett has been crystal clear about this. He said most people should just buy low-cost index funds and leave them alone. That's why he told his own family, when he passes away, to simply put 90% of his wife's money into an S&P 500 index fund and 10% in short-term government bonds. That's Warren Buffett's personal advice. Simple, cheap, effective. Drop me a comment below. Are you currently investing in index funds, or are you picking stocks yourself? I'm curious what strategy you're using. Now, even if you avoid high fees, there's another mistake that destroys wealth even faster. And Buffett says almost everyone is guilty of this one. Mistake 3, short-term thinking. Buffett once said, "If you aren't willing to own a stock for 10 years, don't even think about owning it for 10 minutes. That's because most people think about investing like gambling. They buy a stock hoping it goes up next week or next month. Buffett thinks in decades. Take Coca-Cola, for example. Buffett started buying Coke in the late 1980s. Today, Berkshire Hathaway owns about 400 million shares. That investment pays over $700 million a year in dividends alone. Why? Because he held on for decades while others traded in and out. Here's a fun example. If you had put $1,000 into Amazon in 2001 and simply held, today you'd have well over $1 million. But most people would have sold after the first drop or the first rally. That's the cost of short-term thinking. Wealth is like planting a tree. You don't dig it up every week to see if it's growing. You let time do the work. But even Buffett admits that sometimes thinking short-term or straying from discipline led him into mistake number 4. And he calls this one his costliest errors ever. Mistake 4, investing outside your circle of competence. Buffett has a concept he calls the circle of competence. It means you should only invest in businesses you truly understand. Early in his career, Buffett ignored technology because he didn't understand it. When the dot-com bubble came along, he stayed away, and he was right. Most of those companies went bust. That discipline saved him billions. But here's the catch. Even Buffett admits he sometimes missed opportunities by being too cautious. He called passing on Google and Amazon two of his biggest mistakes. So here's the lesson for us. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to invest in every hot stock or industry. You just need to know your circle, whether that's consumer goods, real estate, or index funds, and stick to it. Buffett says the size of your circle of competence is not very important. Knowing its boundaries is vital. But even if you master your circle, there's one mistake Buffett warns against that can wipe you out completely. And this one destroyed countless investors during the 2008 crash. Mistake 5. Using debt to invest. Buffett has a very clear stance on debt. He says, if you're smart, you don't need it. If you're dumb, you shouldn't be using it. Leverage, borrowing money to invest, can make you rich fast, but it can also wipe you out even faster. Buffett himself admits he came close to disaster early in his career. Berkshire Hathaway once used too much leverage, and it nearly sank the company. Think back to 2008. People who borrowed heavily on margin lost everything when stocks tanked. They weren't just down on paper. They got margin calls, forcing them to sell at the worst possible time. Buffett has seen it over and over again. He once said, I've seen more people fail because of liquor, ladies, and leverage. So if you're tempted to take out a loan to buy stocks, stop. Buffett built one of the greatest fortunes in history by avoiding leverage. And if he doesn't need it, neither do we. Now, money mistakes are bad enough. But Buffett says there's one mistake that can ruin your life in ways money can't fix. And that's mistake number 6. Mistake 6. Choosing the wrong people. Buffett has said the biggest mistake you can make is partnering with the wrong people. Think about it. You can survive a bad stock pick, but if you tie yourself to dishonest or incompetent people, they can drag you down for years. Buffett learned this the hard way. When he bought the old textile company Berkshire Hathaway, he was working with managers who couldn't turn the business around. It was a money pit. Buffett has admitted buying Berkshire was his worst trade ever. That's why he later said, you can't make a good deal with a bad person. Mistake 7. Overcomplicating investing. Buffett believes most people make investing way too complicated. He says, the stock market is designed to transfer money from the active to the patient. In other words, the more you trade, the more you stress, the more likely you are to lose. That's why his advice to his own family is so simple. When he passes, put 90% of the money into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund and 10% into short-term bonds. That's it. No fancy strategies. No stock picking. No day trading. And remember this, Buffett doesn't even have a computer at his desk. If the world's greatest investor doesn't need complicated tools, neither do you. So the next time you're tempted to check your stock app 10 times a day, remember, patience beats activity.